This video is about religion and early life. It's to provide you with knowledge about this topic so that you can then apply it to the AO1 and AO2 questions. Please stop the tape and take notes. And after you finish this, you can go on to Kite and look at past papers and model answers. The definition of abortion is the deliberate termination, that's the ending of a pregnancy, usually before the fetus is 24 weeks. The definition of miracle of life is the idea that life is wonderful, amazing and special. The next definition is blessing. Blessing is the idea that God has favoured a couple with a child. Sanctity of life. This means that life is sacred and holy because it's given by God. Quality of life. This is a measure of fulfilment. Will the child be able to fulfill its potential in life? Conception is when a sperm meets the egg. It's the moment of fertilization. Viable is the point at which a fetus could survive if it were born. An embryo is a fertilized ovum at about 12 to 14 days. A fetus is a fertilized ovum from about 8 weeks. Pro-choice is in favour of a woman's right to choose to have an abortion. Pro-life is opposed to abortion. It's in favour of the life of the fetus. Fostering is the taking in of a child from a different family, looking after the child, getting paid to do so by the government. It's usually for a short period of time. The child will then either go back to its family or be put up for adoption. Adoption is the legal process where a child is taken into the family and is like a daughter or a son. They become adopted into that family permanently. When a couple have a baby, they often think that it is a true miracle of life. It's one of the best things that's ever happened in their lives. However, some people struggle to have a baby. They struggle to conceive. That's about a quarter of all couples. So when they do finally conceive and have a baby, they think in particular it really is a miracle of life. Another word that theists believe is blessing, the idea that God has blessed them with a baby. It's not a right, but it's a gift from God. Buddhists, they don't believe in God. They don't think of a baby being a blessing, but they still believe it is a precious thing. Sanctity of life. The sanctity of life is that life is God-given, it's sacred. Christians, Jews and Muslims, the Western religions, believe that all life comes from God. God created life, and He is the only one that can take life away. So life should be valued and cherished and not destroyed. Buddhists, Hindus and Sikhs, the Eastern religions, believe that life should be valued. And it's all about karma. We're entitled or should get the chance to build up good karma. Karma affects what happens in a person's life either now or in the future. So respecting life creates good karma. Hindus practice non-violence, which is called ahimsa. Buddhists too, they follow the precept of refraining from taking life, but to protect life. So when does life begin? This is a really important question because when a person's considered alive, they have rights and they have rights to life. and if you kill them, it's against the law. So when does life begin? Is it conception? Maybe it's when the backbone is developing. Or what about when the heart starts beating about 4 to 6 weeks? Some believe that life begins when a baby or fetus is viable. That means it can live outside the womb. Now this used to be about 26 weeks, but now a baby can live from about 22 weeks. What do religions think about this? Well, Buddhists believe that life begins even before conception. They believe in something called samsara, which is the cycle of life, death and rebirth. So therefore, there's no real point in time when life begins. Hindus and Sikhs, they believe that life begins at conception, as do some Jews and Christians, particularly Roman Catholics. Others, including many Jews, believe that the fetus is becoming a person as it's growing within the womb. But it's not legally a person until it's born. That's when it receives its soul. Muslims, however, they believe in something called ensoulment. At about 120 days, they believe a fetus receives its soul. Therefore, that's when life really starts. We're now moving on to quality of life. Quality of life refers to the measure of fulfillment of a person's life. Will the child who is born reach its full potential? Will it be wanted and loved? And what about the mother? And what about the other children in the family? Their quality of life may be affected too. If a child is born with severe disabilities, it may have a poor quality of life because it may be suffering and in pain. It might have to have full-time care. What about if a child is unwanted or unloved? The mother is too young, she may have been raped, the father is unsupportive. Again, all these factors affect quality of life. If the child is born into poverty, will the parents be able to feed it, to look after it? So what does justify ending a pregnancy and having an abortion? A child's disability, does it really always affect someone's quality of life? What about the disabled UK athletes? They have a good quality of life. And poverty. In the UK, there is government support. So is poverty a big issue when it comes to quality of life of a child? All these things need to be considered when you're looking at quality of life. We're now moving on to abortion and the law. Before 1967, women weren't allowed to have an abortion in the UK. They did have abortions, but they're called backstreet abortions, where unqualified people carried out the abortion. Many of women died. But in 1967, we have the Abortion Act, which allowed women to have abortions up to 28 weeks. In 1990, this changed. We have the 1990 Human Fertilization and Embryology Act, and this allowed women to have abortions up to 24 weeks. That's because babies were viable at a younger time. So now you can have babies that are viable 22, 23 weeks. So what happens when an abortion is agreed to? Well, you need 2 doctors and they need to agree to one of the following conditions. The first one, if the woman's going to die, then she can have an abortion. Or if there's a real risk that the baby is going to be born disabled, then she can have an abortion. The most popular condition is that there's a risk to the woman's physical and mental health. And finally, if there's a risk to the physical or mental health of her existing children, she can have an abortion. Now, she can have an abortion up to 24 weeks. However, if her life is in danger or the baby is going to have a very high chance of being severely disabled, she can actually have an abortion up to birth. Other things you need to know about an abortion is many abortions take place when it comes to fertility treatment. Also, the rights of the father, they don't have any. And there's 185,000 abortions a year, and only 200 take place after 24 weeks. We're now having a look at rights, the rights of the unborn child, the rights of the mother, the rights of the existing children. The unborn child cannot speak for itself, and it does need to be protected. And you may think, well, if the woman had voluntary unprotected sex, then she should take responsibility for the baby. However, the mother does have rights. She has a right to choose what to do with her own body. She has a right to safety. If she wants an abortion, she has the right to go to a safe hospital or clinic. The fathers have no rights. They may feel very much left out. They do have legal responsibilities, but they have very few rights. As one commentator said, a woman can legally deprive a man of his rights to become a parent or force him to become one against his will. There's been 2 fathers in the UK that brought the mothers to court to see if they could prevent them having an abortion, but they lost. The existing children, as I have said before, they do have rights when it comes to possible abortion of a child. We're now going to move on to pro-choice. People who believe in pro-choice believe that it's a woman's right to choose what she wants to do with her own body. She believes, or these people believe, that life doesn't really start until the baby is born, or at the earliest when the fetus is viable. They think that you should look at women's circumstances. For example, she may have been raped, or a girl may have to stop her education, or a woman may ruin her career. All these things should be taken into account, as well as poverty and disability. They believe that it's cruel to bring a severely disabled child into the world. And the world already has too many people, so why bring in an unwanted child into the world? Pro-life. People who support pro-life are against abortion. They believe that the unborn child is a separate human being from conception. Therefore, abortion is murder. They believe that women who have abortions, later on in their lives, they experience depression and guilt. And disabled people can enjoy a very fulfilling and happy life. Why can't unwanted children be adopted? They also quote that the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights say that children need protection both before and after birth. A good pressure group to discuss is the SPUC, the Society for the Protection of the Unborn Child. This group campaigns for the unborn child. We're now moving on to Western faiths, that's Christianity, Islam and Judaism. Christianity, all Christians believe in the sanctity of life, that we're born in the image and likeness of God. Roman Catholics and most Christians believe that life begins at conception. They believe that abortion is deliberate killing and it goes against one of the commandments that says, do not murder. However, there are some denominations such as the Anglicans and the Methodists, and they believe that sometimes abortion is the lesser of 2 evils, for example in the case of rape or the risk to the mother's life. They believe in the golden rule of Christianity to love your neighbour as yourself. In these circumstances, they would say, what is the most loving and compassionate thing to do? Islam. Muslims believe that all life is sacred and comes from Allah. In the Quran, it says no severer of womb relationship ties will ever enter paradise. And they believe that on Judgment Day, aborted children will ask, why were they killed? Some Muslims believe that the fetus is ensouled and receives a soul at 120 days. It is then regarded fully as a person. Abortion for social and economic reasons is forbidden. Judaism. Jews believe God creates life and He knew us before we were born. God knitted us together in our mother's womb. God has a plan for us. Judaism teaches that the fetus is not fully a person until its head is born. Therefore, up to that point, the mother's life has priority over the fetus. Eastern faiths, Buddhism, Hinduism and Sikhism. Buddhism, they believe in the cycle of birth, death and rebirth, which is called samsara. And they also believe in ahimsa, which is the precept, I will not harm any living thing. However, Buddhists do consider motives very important. And the Dalai Lama says that there may be exceptional situations where abortion can be allowed. Each case should be considered on its own merits, but if the motive is for selfless compassion, then it's acceptable because it had a good intention. Hinduism, Brahman, the supreme God, the supreme spirit, is within everyone, therefore all life is sacred and needs to be protected. So life continues at conception. Hindus also believe in the principle of non-violence and protection of life. Abortion affects people's karma, and if the motives are selfish, then bad karma will result. And finally, Sikhism. Sikhs believe in the sanctity of life, and in the Guru Granth Sahib it says that a child is a gift from God. They also believe that every person has a divine spark. They believe that life starts at conception and abortion is morally wrong because life needs to be protected. Sikhs do accept abortion in certain circumstances, for example rape, or the mother's life is in danger. Alternatives to abortion. There are 3 alternatives to abortion. The first one is to keep the baby. It's much easier now to keep a baby because you get government support through housing benefit and social security benefits. Also, the father now is legally required to pay a contribution towards his child. Many religions support women keeping their baby. For example, the Cardinal Thomas Winning of Glasgow is an organisation that has been supporting women for decades. They help them financially and also emotionally. A second alternative is adoption. Adoption very often can take place within a family, but also other adoptions take place with couples who cannot have children of their own. After lots of investigation, the child is then given to the couple. And these adopted children at the age of 18 can then go and find their birth parents. What do religions think about adoption? Well, most religions are very supportive of adoption. Muslims, they believe in adoption, but they also believe that the child will always remain a member of the original family. So although they may be brought up by another family, they are still part of their original family. Finally, fostering. Fostering is when a child is placed in temporary foster care. These foster families are paid by the government to look after the child. This fostering may be short or long term. At the end of the fostering time, the child may be given back to its original family, or it may be taken into care, or it might be adopted.